Actually, good article on the subject, Porn on the Brain TV review. Within 20 seconds of tonight's Channel 4 documentary, we're told that online porn is, quote, turning kids into psychopaths. At that point, I almost gave up, but I'm glad I didn't. Britain has come a long way since 1968, when TV's Red Triangle would warn what sounds to my Australian ears as the sex wheel imagery. Nowadays, most extreme hardcore pornography is just a few clicks away on the internet, freely available to adults, children, and cats walking across keyboards. Whoa! Strange thought there. And Porn on the Brain, former editor of Loaded magazine, Martin Dobry writes that of the plethora of his this plethora of effect is affecting the lives of teenagers with a particular focus on neuroscience. I was behind the scenes unpaid consultant for the show, which is to say I didn't have any influence on the content beyond recommending some experts the producers should talk to, as well as some self-proclaimed gurus that they should avoid. The result is intriguing if mixed in quality and edgy, based on an edgy blend of neuroscience interviews with porn adult teens and opinions dressed up as facts. The flagship of the program is an impressive neuroscience study involving Channel 4 and Dr. Valerie Voon from the University of Cambridge. In it, Voon conducts a functional fMRI experiment to test whether a group of men who admit to being compulsive porn users show different patterns of brain activity to a control group. This study hasn't been peer-reviewed, so caution is needed, but preliminary results reveal an interesting trend. Compulsive users tend to show heightened responses to porn-related images within brain networks that mediate reward and motivation. These responses, on the face of it, are quite similar to those absorbed in people with drug and alcohol addiction. Of course, showing a pattern of brain activity similar to that seen in substance dependence doesn't make porn a drug, and it doesn't mean compulsive users are, quote, addicted, unquote, in the same way drug users can be. Here's the program, but not Voon herself falls into the trap of claiming that a behavior is somehow more real or objective because it can be linked to brain activity. As I watched Debbie declare that brain imaging provides proof, unquote, of porn addiction, I could hear neuroscience stomping up in disgust. Official bodies in psychiatry don't recognize compulsive porn use as an addiction. That's largely because the boundary conditions haven't been mapped out. The prevalence is unknown, and crucially, unlike the case with drugs or gambling, it's unclear to what, if any, compulsive use of porn harms lives. Professor Matt Field, a psychiatrist at the University of Liverpool, was interviewed as part of the program. When I asked him what he thinks about compulsive porn use being framed as a separate addiction, he said, like anything people find pleasurable, whether it can be chocolate or playing video games, internet porn can be addictive, but whether there is anything particularly interesting or special about porn remains to be seen. For me, the low point of Porn on the Brain comes when discussing the link between porn and sexual violence. Here, the show completely abandons the evidence, which supports at most a very weak association between porn and violent sexual attitudes, and doesn't support at all the conclusion that sexual imagery causes aggression or sex offending. Dobby just strives violently to extract clear answers from Professor Gail Dines, an anti-pornography campaigner, and Dr. John Woods, a psychotherapist at the Portman Clinic, but when asked directly whether violent porn causes violence towards women, Dines and Woods resort to antidote and weasel words. At one point, Woods says, "We have a great difficulty in proving the connection between violent imagery and violent behavior, but clinically it's clear that there's a connection." Say again? You have proof in proving it. You can't say clinically that if you can't prove it, then it isn't clinically clear, and you're delusional if you think it is. It objectively is not, because you can't prove the connection. It's objectively clinically murky. You just contradicted yourself, man. Because of these shortcomings, Porn on the Brain is bound to divide public opinion along established lines, fueling confirmation bias on both sides. Those in favor of porn will attack the multiplicity of flaws and arguing that porn provides special or valid example of addiction, or that there is any causal link between legal porn and sex offending. Those against will take the antidotes of Woods and Dines to reinforce moral objections, or like W, they conclude that brain imaging provides much sought, quote, proof, unquote, of pornography's nefarious power. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. From what we know of impulse control disorders such as gambling addiction, it seems obvious that online porn, like anything that makes people feel good, might lead to some compulsive behavior, and that this compulsion might interfere negatively with people's lives, but that doesn't mean it will, and it doesn't mean that online porn is generally harmful. As Voon told me, her research results are neutral about non-compulsive porn use. This is not dissimilar to the majority of the population who have tried legal smoking, alcohol, or illegal drugs, but only in small proportion run into difficulty. Not dissimilar to the majority of the population who have tried legal smoking, alcohol, or illegal drugs, cannabis, club drugs, but only a small portion run into difficulties. Yes, that's very true. It's with respect to, okay, so here's the thing about me. I used MDMA at one point. I used it. I had a good time with it, and now I'm done. I don't have a problem with it. It's just part of my past. I consumed, club drug, MDMA, the clinical name for, the drug that was known as ecstasy, basically. So I liked it. Found it very enjoyable and such, but, I didn't like so much spending $50 to get, a very small amount of it. So I kind of stopped, and yeah. I started putting the money in stocks and stuff instead and making more healthy decisions, Anyway, so for my part, I agree with Voon and Field. Cliche as it sounds, we need more research on porn before leaping to ignorant conclusions about its addictive or harmful effects. What porn in the brain does... I'm just... Mentally, I'm doing this. It may sound like a cliche to say because it gets said so many times in so many articles. I've read this particular statement before from a lot of articles, so yes, it does come up a lot, but you don't need to be original all the time. I mean, it's not a big deal if you're not always original, and we need more research on this before leaping to ignorant conclusions about its addictive or harmful effects. What Porn in the Brain does best is get us all thinking about what sort of research that might be. This is just crazy, and I mean this is what's happened essentially, and I've been mirroring concordance for a big amount of my time here on YouTube. The whole pitfalls of thinking, antidotes, video. I recommend that if you're a watcher of this channel that you go watch his video from Concordance about pitfalls of thinking, antidotes, because that'll help you stop getting taken in by this kind of bullshit, and everything. You won't fall for as much crap. You'll learn to flex your anti-bullshit muscle, and this is important because it helps protect you from spending your money on useless therapies that won't actually help you.